Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started on this City Commission workshop for Monday, March 27th. Can we please call the roll?
Commissioner Vila Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner Burbank.
No.
Commissioner Colwell.
Here.
Commissioner Jody Lee.
Here.
Commissioner McCool.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bradford.
Here.
And Mayor Vila.
Here. Will you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, I'd like to go ahead and call the Rotary Club up for their presentation and update. Mr. Joe Hearn and Vice President Pat Northey.
Yes, Pat could not wait. First off, good evening, community of Deltona, Mayor Avila, and Commission. It's wonderful to see all of you, and we are excited to share some of the great things that Rotary is doing in your community. I think I'm good with the clicker. Is there a way I can control these slides and not a slideshow? I think she sent that in as a request. Maybe? Is there anybody here? Yep, come on. First off, while she's coming up here, let me just introduce you to our amazing Rotary Club. If y'all would please stand up. Please stand up. Please stand up. There you go. This is not all of us, but when I told them that we were presenting to one of our communities, Deltona, look how many showed up. Now, I will tell you, this is probably being recorded. I may get in a little bit of trouble, but we did present to DeBerry and Orange City, and we had, I think, 2 people show up. So that's how important Deltona is to us. So we are happy to be here. And just real quick, go ahead and keep standing. We've got Bill Wright. We've got his better half, Debbie Wright. We've got former Commissioner Bob McFall. We've got Barbara Santiago. We've got Emma Santiago. We've got Tanya over here from Halifax, and we've got Eli the Bird Nerd. He's with us too. So Eli takes care of our Wolf Pack Run cleanup. So we have a road that we've adopted here in Deltona called Wolf Pack Run, and I'll just talk about it. Am I ready now? Okay. You may be seated. So,
Mr. Hearn, there was someone around here mentioned that you forgot to mention a Rotary Club member.
Oh, and Maritza Avila Vasquez. I am so sorry, Maritza. I should know better, too. You need to come to more meetings, and I won't forget. But anyways, I know. Well, that's going to change, and I'm excited to share that with you as well. So we're really excited to be a part of your community. We meet every Thursday morning at 7:30 for breakfast, and 7:45 our meeting starts. We usually get you out by 8:30 if I'm not talking too much. And it's a great time. Of course, we're at your beautiful center at Deltona. It's a very convenient location. Our Rotary sign's out there on the street, and we're just real proud to be part of this community. Alrighty, so for Rotary, we serve, as Rotary International, we serve 1.2 million members worldwide. We have 35,000 plus clubs, and we share responsibility to take action on our world's most persistent issues. I'm very honored to be the president of this Rotary Club. This is the first female president that we've had of Rotary International. So to all you female leaders up there and in this room, thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause, especially as we wrap up International Women's Month. So I'm honored to serve under the first female president ever of Rotary International. It's just really exciting things. Her motto this year and our slogan is Imagine Rotary, and it's really just opening eyes and opening the doors to just everyone to understand what Rotary is. For years, I thought Rotary was just this old man's club. This is terrible, what I'm about to say. It's probably not fully politically correct. But anyways, so now that I am president of this Rotary Club, we have also a president's club with all the West Volusia Rotaries. So combined, we can just accomplish a lot more. We can, our grants, it's easier to ask for grants for bigger projects and so forth. And I'm the oldest president out of all of the West Volusia Rotary Clubs. So it just kind of falls in suit. But once I joined Rotary, I knew that I was Rotarian my whole life. And it's just an amazing opportunity to serve your community, to give back, and to do it with so much heart and pride. And like much pride in Deltona, we're honored to be a part of this community. All righty, right now we have 31 active members and 2 honorary, and I think we've got maybe 3 to 4 that we're going to be inducting on April 6th of this year that have been coming to our meetings, and they have to go to 1 or 2 meetings first before we can make them a member, and we're excited about that. Our average age is 56, but we are trending younger. I'm really trying this year to engage some of our younger generation, because when us older folks like myself retire, it's time to make sure that the community service is staying engaged and people in our community, we keep that momentum going because it's important. The meeting day, as I said, is Thursday mornings at the beautiful center at Deltona at 7:45 in the morning. I'm the president. We have our president-elect is Michael Davey. He's over in DeBerry. Our secretary is Tanya Williams with Halifax Health. We're super excited about that. Our treasurer, Ann Carter, who is here tonight also. She is wonderful and my right hand. Sergeant of Arms is Scott Miller. He is the Main Street Bank president in Orange City. And our immediate past president is Dr. Don Canfer. Okay, from 2021 to 22, our club gave $35,750 back to the community. So there's a lot of clubs in West Volusia that are giving back $100,000, $80,000, but they also have 100 plus in their clubs. We are a very small but mighty club, as you can see. So through our fundraising initiatives, through many different things that we do, we were able to give back a total of $35,750 to the communities that we serve. And here is where our 2021-2022 giving went. Scholarship awards, $3,700. Presidential charity awards, almost $5,000. Community donations and contributions, $6,300. I think there was a commissioner up here that called us during the terrible floods you had here. Somebody was out of a home, they needed food, they needed help, and we just stepped right up, cut them a check, delivered. I think Pat Northey delivered them the check. And we're here for those kind of situations too, where we can support. Youth initiatives, $6,400. Rotary Foundation contributions, almost $12,000, and those contributions help with all kinds of worldwide efforts. So it could help with clean water somewhere in a country that may be not so fortunate. It could be helping with some things in Ukraine for helping house people and so forth. So it goes to many different things. And then speaker honorariums, and this is something I really want your community to understand. So the speaker honorariums are basically for, if you have a nonprofit in your community, I think we have Deltona Strong, I saw here maybe, yes? Deltona Strong, Deltona Community Gardens. If they come and speak at our club makes a donation just for them speaking, just to their organization. So it was great. We had Jim and Paul Pesci come talk about the gardens. It was just fantastic. It was a really good experience, and those go to them. So please share with a lot of your nonprofits that are in your community that Rotary is here. We are alive, we're active, and we want to help. So please call Pat and get on the schedule to become a speaker. Rotary avenues of service, we have club service, vocational service, community service, international service, and new generation service. Our Interact Club, right here in Deltona, Trinity Christian Academy, one of the most active Interact clubs that there are is right here with our Rotary Club. They just got back from RYLA, which is Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, where they packed for, I think, 5,000 meals for people where they got to have some community service, but they also all got to go to the conference and participate and be engaged. They are really, really engaged. They came to our club at the center for a presentation, and they ended up giving us money because they raised money on their own initiative. So if you see them out in the community, if you see them, they just helped with Habitat for Humanity with a home here in Deltona. If you see them out there, those are the shirts they wear. Be sure to thank them because they are our future community service people that we need in our communities. All right, candidate meet and greet. We did a candidate meet and greet. We are a non-political organization. However, it's important for everyone to be aware of the people in our community that are running for office and for them to have a relationship with that they can talk to and feel comfortable. So we did host that. Third grade dictionary delivery and bowling for literacy. So this is one of my favorites. Basically, all the Rotary clubs in West Volusia get together and we do what we call a bowling for literacy event. And what that is we actually buy dictionaries for every single third grader in West Volusia and Volusia County. Just West Volusia, in West Volusia. So we literally, I think Bill goes to most of the schools himself, and then many others help him. He's passionate about the project, but it was such a joy to go to the schools this year. We go to the elementary schools, we meet with all the third graders, we share with them what a dictionary is, all the different words, all the different things they can learn. Bill has a great little saying, you know, even when the electricity goes out for a hurricane, you can open up your dictionary and still read. And they just get so excited. They get so excited because they have their own personal dictionary. And that just, you know, anybody who has their own of anything, you know, that's important. So it's a very, very special thing. Okay, we also do a big food basket brigade where we have all the Rotarians get together. As you can see, we're actually at the center there, packing a bunch of food, loading it up in, I think, Bob's truck it was this year, and passing it on to help people in need in our community. We have our Wreaths Across America. So just to give you a little prelude, when I came into my office as president, my number one priority was our youth, because I'm just passionate about if we invest in our youth today, it honestly will change tomorrow for all of us. It's just gonna, the better we can make them, the better our tomorrow's gonna look, the better we're gonna be in our retirement homes and everywhere else that we're at. So that's one of our initiatives. The other one is environment and also our veterans. I think that's a very important initiative. So we were able to contribute to Wreaths Across America. If you haven't been to that event, your former Commissioner King, he's the one who got me engaged in it, and it is just an amazing event. It's an amazing event. I forget how many wreaths we purchased, maybe 30 or 40, but quite a few, and it was a wonderful experience. We were able to actually give wreaths back to some people in the community who didn't have the opportunity to buy one and support and help out and so forth. So it's a fantastic event right at Deltona Memorial Gardens. We do Adopt a Road, Wolfpack Run. So we have Eli, who's in charge of that. Back there, wave your hand, Eli. Eli is adamant. He stays on top of all of us about getting out on our regular basis and going out and cleaning that road up. Wolfpack Run is right by the high school, as you all know, right by Deltona High School. And it is just, it's a great experience. It's a wonderful opportunity for Rotarians to get engaged, to get out in the community, to clean up. As you can see, sometimes there's, you know, 5 or 6 bags of garbage. I will say, I would have expected a lot more garbage just being right next to a high school, because I remember when I was in high school and you learned all those good skills later in life. And it was, I think Eli said it wasn't that bad last time. And I was really, really surprised. But it's really something we're passionate about. We're trying to adopt a couple other roads, and Eli keeps us on top of that. And I believe you report back to the city, right? Yes. Perfect. And then we report back because it's important to do it. So if you need a good example for Adopt a Road, let us know. We'll come to one of your community events and share how we do it. Okay, Hops and Vine, it's our annual event. We do it at the beautiful center at Deltona. We just moved it there. It was our 2nd year this year. It's one of our signature events. Halifax Health, right here in your community, is our sponsor, and it's all kinds of just wonderful wine tastings and beer tastings, and the whole club goes out and hustles silent auction items for a couple months, and everyone's really just hitting some of our big sponsors. If you haven't attended, you definitely should go to the next one. It's a fantastic time, and it's a great time to see the community come together and just enjoy some things in Deltona. Then we also, this year, Me Strong, which is a big race over in DeLand, they were doing their last run. The ladies, the 5 ladies who do that race, Linda Ryan and her friends, they put that together 10 years ago, and it just got too much for them. So the Rotary Club came together, and we said, you know, how do we let this go away? I mean, that race draws up to, I think 6,400 was their biggest race they've ever had, 5,800 this year. How do we just let that go away? Well, we couldn't. So we met with the ladies. Of course, when you have a product that does so well, they were hesitant to give that away to anybody or to let that, you know, go bad. So this year, the Rotary Clubs in West Volusia took it over. We helped manage it. We helped run the whole thing. Our district secretary, Karen Wise, kind of took the lead on it. Wonderful woman. And then all of our clubs were involved. Our Ann's was stuffing bags, I think, for 2 days. Eli, myself, Don, we were out putting up proud sponsor signs everywhere. And then in the end, they asked, we're the smallest club in West Volusia, and we were honored that they asked us to be the one to speak on behalf of all the Rotaries. So that was just a really big honor for us, especially not being, I'm going to get in trouble again, but DeLand can be a little DeLand-centric sometimes, so it was really special that they incorporate us and bring us all together, because that's what it's all about. Please edit this tape. Okay. Then Habitat for Humanity, like I mentioned earlier, our Interact Club is helping reconstruct a house. And then last but certainly not least, something that's really fantastic, and one of the reasons why we're here today, because we'd love to see some engagement from the commission, just at least for our opening ceremonies. Sheriff Chitwood is going to be there to kind of cut the ribbon. Lots of county council will be there. Pat Northey has been really dedicated to this race for many, many years. So when Pat lost her husband, and for all the community service work that she's done in our community, across the county, across the state, the Trail Queen, we said, what can we do to honor her for many, many years to come? So the race is officially now called the Ed and Pat Northey River Run, and that's the permanent new name of the race. You'll see it on some of the graphics. She's very humble, I guess, because it's not up on this one, but needless to say, that is going to be April 15th. If you have not been to this race, it is probably the prettiest 5K I've ever been to. It is under beautiful, if you haven't been to Gemini Springs, which I'm sure all of you have, it's just beautiful oak canopies. You're running along the river or the springs. You are under beautiful paved trails, thanks to Pat and her efforts to make that happen. And just, it's a stunning run. The whole community comes together. This year, all the proceeds will go to the Boys and Girls Club for our youth. It will hit you right here at home with lovely Barbara over at Harris Saxon. And that will make a big impact for our youth this summer, and for them to be able to do some extra things they definitely deserve. With that said, please come out if you can. If there's some teams, Mr. Chisholm, that you want to get together with your departments, we'd love to have them to get the message out. But it's really important that we bring the 5K together for the community of Deltona. If you have a nonprofit, you want to put your tent up, Deltona Strong, Community Gardens, please contact me. We'll get you a tent set up there, and it's really, really important. And we'd love to see as many of our elected officials out there as well, too, so we can really celebrate. 8 a.m.
8 a.m. Okay.
Great question. Yes, you don't have to run. Debbie will be running, but everybody else can walk if you want.
You got oxygen for us?
So it's a 5K, 10K. You can walk or run. We've got the Boy Scouts involved. We're going to have a lot of our youth out there from the Boys and Girls Club this year, doing cheering zones, running in the race too, I think. Yes? Good. Okay. No pressure, Barbara.
No pressure to our commission, just so you know, but I already signed up.
Thank you, Mayor. Leading by example. There you go. Let's follow suit, everyone.
No pressure.
Okay. Again, Gemini Springs, there it is, the Pat and Ed Northey 5K, 10K River Run. We got a lot of county council support, a lot of good sponsors. Advent Health is our presenting sponsor on this one, and it's an amazing day. It's a beautiful time, and honestly, just because of the environment that you're in, it's gorgeous. Okay, again, Thursday morning, 7:45 at the beautiful center at Deltona. I do have a couple other updates of just some other things that we do in your community. One, the community gardens. I'm going to be working a little bit with them to see what we can do to support them a little bit more. We're also involved in the big backpack giveaway. We had a table there this year. I think we brought rulers. Was it rulers that we gave out? Rulers for the firefighters backpack giveaway that they do. An amazing, probably the best backpack giveaway in West Volusia. Again, I'm going to get in trouble by maybe some other municipalities, but that thing is so well done. I think, Emma, you headed that up for a long time, but just like a science, and it just amazes me to see all these beautiful people in the community of Deltona come out and just embrace that moment. It's a great time. Barista Across America, we mentioned. Our Rotary Club also went out to the Latin Festival here in Deltona at Dewey Boster and volunteered their time. We are also giving out scholarships this year. I think the deadline was extended till the first of the month. Does anybody know that answer?
Yes, it's extended until Friday.
It's extended till Friday. We are having a hard time giving away scholarships. I don't know why. You can't give these children money, but we're having a difficult time giving it to them. So I called Mr. McAuliffe, I called Pine Ridge principal, trying to let them know, just let's get this message out. It's a simple form. It's not, but if you know people, we've had some requests outside of our community, and we really don't want to do that. Like, this money was dedicated to serve the youth in this community. So we really would like to see some students. So if you have grandchildren, anybody in the community, if you're listening, if you have youths or children graduating, please go go to our website, go to our social media pages, and apply, because this money is there for your having. And what's nice about our scholarship money, it's not dedicated to just tuition. So if they need it to eat, to room and board, we do need to pay it to the entity, but it's not dedicated to just that. So if the commission could help spread that, that would be wonderful. And last but not least, my last goal for this year, and I'm really working hard to make it happen, is to open a Hispanic satellite club with our club. So basically, Rotary has allowed clubs to open a satellite club. So in other words, if you have people like Commissioner Vasquez, who do not want to get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, you can have a satellite club off of your club for a happy hour. You could do it two times a month. So the president of the Hispanic Chamber, Lourdes Leon, she's also a member, and she was supposed to be here tonight, but she couldn't make it. She will be heading that club up, as well as Emma Santiago. Raise your hand, Emma. They don't know who you are. Okay. And Emma are starting it. And then once we have 5 members, we're going to be starting that Hispanic satellite club. Is it over 40% now Hispanics in Deltona? 44? I forget. But needless to say, we have a wonderful community of Hispanics right here in Deltona. So we want to just make sure we're catering to that. It's important, and it's important to get them engaged in Rotary. So we're going to be starting a satellite club. I think the girls have already talked about it being an evening club, 5 o'clock. You don't even have to be Hispanic to go to that satellite club. It is part of the DeBerry, Deltona, Orange City Rotary Club, but it'll be a satellite club that just meets at a different time, but they follow our rules, our bylaws, and all that. So just wanted to share that with you. And last but not least, this is past my time, but I'm just going to ask you that Thursday night, if you haven't been invited already, the Rotary Club will be there, but we are having the Regional Healthcare Awards for the community. Advent Health, Family Health Source, Halifax Health. Everyone's been nominated. It's a great event. You are all invited. It's Thursday night, 6 p.m. at the beautiful center at Deltona. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing us Rotarians to come in here and just share what we do in the community. And if I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Commissioner Vila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Joe, for throwing me out there like that. Telling everybody I don't want to wake up at 7 in the morning.
Yes.
But I am very proud of this organization. I still once in a while attend to represent the city of Deltona, because the city of Deltona is a member. But I have been a member way back when it was 4 Towns Rotary, and we met at John Knox, where they served that great lunch, right? And I was honored to receive the Service Above award at one time, so I know this organization very well. One of the things that you didn't mention, and I'm wondering if you still provide it, is the college visit. Is it RILA? Is it still called RILA?
It's called RILA, yes.
Okay. So when I ran the youth organization, 4 of my youth members were lucky to be chosen by the Rotary, and they spent, I think, was 3 or 4 days at the college up in St. Augustine, and they were very excited. And another member of Hey God, which is the group, was also an exchange student who spent a whole year in Thailand. Do you still have that exchange student?
Yeah, we did.
Come on up, Bill.
Because that's a really, really fun program for the youth in high school.
If I could just take a minute, COVID kind of knocked the youth exchange program out, and they're starting it again next year.
Okay.
For 2 years, they had to shut it down because of COVID.
Because of COVID.
But we've had like 6 in our little club exchange students from all over the world, and it's a great cultural exchange. And they stay a year here. They serve a year, senior year of high school here, and it doesn't count back home. So they give up a year of their life. They got to go back and finish out their senior year.
Oh.
But it changes not only their lives, but also the people that let them stay in their homes for that year.
Yeah. Well, my youth member was lucky because he got the chance to go to Thailand and spend the year in Thailand.
It's a great program.
The other question I have is, we used to, I don't remember, was it the Fish Fry Festival at Gemini Springs? Bob, do you remember what it was?
Catfish Festival.
Catfish Festival, and I always heard that the Rotary was thinking of bringing it back. Is that
We
still-
talked about incorporating it with the River Run, not this year, but maybe next year, about after the River Run to make it more of a festival, which is we're slowly getting, this year we're actually having community vendors be a part of the River Run, but we're talking about next year turning that into a festival fish fry afterwards, yes.
Those were also very successful festivals. We had two platforms. One was the regular country music, and then we had the teen platform on the other side, which was at that time sponsored by Time Warners.
Wow.
And then they used to tell us to lower the music. But I'm hoping that you guys bring it back. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for doing so much for the community. We really appreciate you.
Commissioner Jody Lee and then Commissioner Burbank.
Mr. Hearn, I just want to thank you all for being up here and doing everything you all do in our community. We all need more groups like this that do stuff in our community. And anything I can do as a commissioner or not a commissioner, I'll do to help. I'm glad you're helping us, the kids and all these different projects. You mentioned the Deltona Gardens. That's a good group. I'm glad you're helping them. I think the whole city should help this group a little bit more to do some things for them. There's different things going on in the community. It's nice to see people taking your time with everything else that's going on in life to help different people in different groups and taking time out of your family's lives to help other people. I just want to thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Burbank and then Vice Mayor Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hearn.
Yes, sir.
I know most of your members, and thank you so much. To the point, though. You're looking for kids looking for scholarships?
Yes.
She has a list of kids that just applied for the William S. Harvey.
Oh,
Done.
without
Thank you.
access to that?
Not right this second, but I can get it to you.
I'll take it right now. That's perfect. No, that's great. No worries.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Vice Mayor Bradford.
Again, I want to thank you guys for all you do in the community. I don't think half of what you mentioned up there is actually what all you do, because there is a lot more. You know, you guys also helped with Christmas in July,
That's
which
right.
we will be looking forward to working with you guys again soon
Absolutely.
on. But taking the time out, you know, I was a Rotary member, and I couldn't give half as much time as you guys gave. You guys are fearless leaders in our community, and thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for all the time and dedication you guys give that I couldn't give. So you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCool.
Joe, thank you and the rest of the Rotary for always showing up when people don't show up, you know what I mean? And setting a standard of leadership in our community. It's always great to have great leaders in place, and I know the majority of you and have good relationships with you and know how hard you all work, and been to your recent meetings, and it's very inspiring, you know, as far as what you do, and I will make the commitment to come to more meetings because I think it worthwhile, and I think it's an important part of our community. Thank you for also sponsoring the run. It is really, really important, and taking up the task that many are afraid to do. So thank you for making the investment in our community and growing the club. So important, growing the club, get more community involvement. You've done a really great job. So thank you again for everything that you guys do for our community. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for making it a priority. And continued success, whatever we can do to help do that, to help shepherd the community along also. I think that, you know, we will be there for, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And half the battle is really awareness, and that's what we really wanted to come present. So I thank you, Mr. Chisholm and Mayor Avila, for allowing us to come forward and share what Rotary does, because there is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful humans in Deltona, and sometimes they just need to know what's out there. They may not know that this is an opportunity. They can grab coffee with some great people before they head to work. So it's just important those messages are getting out. So thank you for allowing us to come here and present.
You know, I went to the Rotary Club not too long ago to speak, and you guys made me feel so welcomed. So welcomed. I felt like an all-star. I'm like, oh my goodness. So thank you guys for everything you do. Honestly, what you guys do supersedes whatever we can do up here, you know. You guys are the true definition of being out and about in the community. And Joe especially, I mean, Dude, I don't know how you do it.
I don't either
I
some
really
days.
don't know how you do it. I mean, you told me, oh, I see you here and there, but I'm like, I get there, you've already been there. So I really look up to a lot of the stuff you're doing, especially for our kids. You and I share that passion. And half of the things that people don't know about you going to Tallahassee to lobby for them, our kids, if it wasn't for people like you and some of the stuff the Rotary Club is doing, our kids wouldn't have half of the things that they have now. So thank you guys all.
I agree. Thank you so much. And would it be possible if we get a quick picture with the commission so we can put it on our Facebook? Is that allowed?
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. All right.
If you give me a camera, I'll take it.
Oh, you will. Thank you.
All right. This time we're going to move to 4B, which is the review and discussion of ordinance number 03-2022, Chapter 22, businesses regulating the location, placement, and use of mobile food dispensing vehicles with the city. Mr. Chisholm?
Okay, you got a copy of the ordinance in front of you, and if you go over to about the third page, it goes to the various sections. It has to do with the operation. And for questions, I'll just briefly run through it, and you guys tell me what you want to talk about. Mobile food dispensing vehicles is a vehicle that is a public food service establishment and self-propelled or otherwise movable from place to place, and includes self-contained utilities, including but not limited to gas, water, electricity, liquid waste disposal, sometimes referred to as a food truck or trailer, food cart, and otherwise regulated by the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, requiring a mobile food vendor license subject to Florida statutes 509.102 and in compliance with Section 22-191 of the City Code. Mobile food dispensing vehicles are stationary for periods of more than 10 minutes, while foodstuffs are prepared, served, or are solid. A mobile food dispensing vehicle does not include roving vehicles like an ice cream truck or periodically travel throughout the residential areas of the city, selling pre-prepared or prepackaged food items, or street peddler of unprepared foodstuffs, makeshifts, standalone restaurants or buffets such as a food tent or mobile vendor selling anything other than foodstuffs. So that's section 3, and you got another section 3, it looks like. 22-191 supplemental regulations is added as a new section 22, businesses, Article 6, street vendors to regulate mobile food dispensing vehicles within the city limits. And you go through the various sections. Instead of me reading everything, let me ask you, do you have any questions thus far?
Commissioner Jody Lee.
One of my things on there, it says, it's got the description for the mobile food dispensing vehicles, but it also doesn't count makeshift standalone restaurants or buffets or such as food tent. So if someone has a food tent and they bring their grill and they're cooking it, shouldn't that be put in the same category as a mobile food truck? Just because it's not I understand it's a tent, but that means they're outside of the. I know what the state ordinance says, but we can also add to it. We can't decline what the state does, but we can add.
Sure.
As far as
what brought about a lot of this discussion is the state preempted city regulations and government regulations under 509.102, and they basically have a definition of what mobile food dispensing vehicle means and then how you can regulate it. So they limited for the city the ability to do anything that conflicts. They were setting out, this is what it is, this is what we're taking care of, in government, these are the things you may do. So this ordinance was tailored for the most part based on the issues that were raised that we could do something about, and that's what you see in here. Doesn't mean you have to do all of those things, but you can't just say, well, we're now going to apply it to a tent or we're going to apply it to something else. So I mean, this is, again, the state has been doing these kinds of things. They preempt the government, the local governments, and then say, this is what you may do. And that's what happened here. Probably if that had not happened, you would not have seen this ordinance at all. So is that?
Well, I'm sure everybody up here knows, a while back, I used to do a lot of food truck events at Plaza, where me and my wife's business are. We no longer, of course, I don't have that business, so I'm not doing the events. But a lot of this stuff came forward after I was doing food truck events, and a past city manager made it harder for people to do it in the city. The problem is, I mean, there's only a few things in here I want to pick apart, but we all know it was Mr. Peters, when he was city manager, going after me for doing food truck events. I mean, it's not rocket science. Everybody knows that. Well, I'm not doing them events. So some of the things that were put in there, I mean, there's a lot of it that's good, but there's some things that were put in there that go after people for unneeded. I mean, there's a part in here, you have to get a notarized letter from the owner of a property. Okay, so when they set up at Lowe's, the owner of Lowe's is signing a notarized letter. Come on, let's use a little bit of common sense. They set up at Walmart. You think somebody from the Walton family's coming to sign a notarized letter? You know it's not happening. And they've also put this in, but they haven't enforced it either. Because, I mean, I think Mr. Burbank reached out to the clerk and asked how many people have got permits for food trucks since this ordinance went into effect, and there's been absolutely zero. So that way, there's nobody enforcing the ordinance anyway. So, I mean, we need to fix, there's a couple little things in there, I mean, that just don't make no sense. I mean, most of these food vendors are trying to make an honest living. Most of them are minority-owned businesses. Why do we always have to add more stuff to make it more difficult for someone to do business? Okay.
Commissioner Caldwell.
Are they required to display their business tax inspections and state licenses on site?
I just moved past what I was just reading to you. I don't think we require them to do that. I don't know. I'll have to look again, and when I find it, I'll let you know.
Commissioner McCool?
Thank you. I would like us to look further into what we're talking about as far as what is required for signatures, what is the liability of doing what we're talking about doing, the liability as far as property ownership. You know, there's ambiguous information regarding, well, from the state regarding that. And the tents, the state sets up what is considered a mobile food truck. That's the parameter that and the biggest thing being that when we talk about it's self-propelled, that's a mobile food truck. That's what the state says. And that's the operative word there, is self-propelled. So a tent is not, you can outfit a tent with gas, water, electricity, waste disposal, you can do that, but you can't make a tent self-propelled. So the state only sets the parameters for this as far as what we are regulating here. And it says in the section also that the section may not be construed to affect a municipality, county, or other local government entity's authority to regulate the operation of mobile food dispensing vehicles other than the regulations described in subsection 2, which says that we can't charge them an extra permit. We can't, and I think that the permits that were charged were under special event permits, and I don't know that they were charged to them. But we're talking about, I think that life and safety issues on this also. I mean, I've seen food trucks at churches taking full advantage of the depth and breadth that we give them as far as operating how many food trucks are there. I've seen that, you know, and I don't know, do we know how many complaints by food trucks have been made since this ordinance went into effect? Has anyone heard anything? Anyone? Do you know it?
Joe, do you know? I don't either. None since I've been here, I can say that.
Right. So that's my point. When we were bringing all this up, we discussed all of this when this ordinance went into place, and the only thing that I would continue discussing or questioning was who has the authority to relieve us of the insurance liability, because I'm sorry, but there are people are litigious, you know, as far as that goes, and I just want us covered under the maximum, you know, as far as that goes. We're not trying to permit anybody. We're trying to enforce life safety issues, and we have the authority to do that. So that's where I'm at with that.
Marcia, one of her Commissioner McCool's question was, do we have who has the authority of relieving us from any potential lawsuits, correct? Is that what you want to know, liability?
Yes, I want to know who the authority is that dictates what our liability exposure is. If we put an amendment in the ordinance that says that if we get permission from an agent of the owner, a licensed agent, that could be the manager, that could be a property management company or whatever, I think that is restrictive. If Lowe's says you can set up, you can. But therein the fact lies also is that it's our fire department's responsibility to go make sure and for the food truck to comply with what the findings are for life and safety issues.
Yeah.
So who is that authority that says?
There is no authority. I mean, the reality is, if we, you know, I mean, this came up when we were going through this. I tried like 3 different ways to write that one paragraph, but the reality is whoever you say over at Lowe's can sign. What was happening over there, then the manager would talk to the organization and they would say, no, you're not signing, because they don't want to take that liability. If that food truck's in their parking lot and something goes wrong, it blows blows up, some people are poisoned, any of those kinds of things, if whoever in their organization that would sign, they would be responsible.
I think that that is separate from the de facto part of if the agent signs. So if we give them permission to sign, we no longer have responsibility over whether somebody can get the agent to sign or not.
But the problem was then the couple of them that were either at Lowe's or Walmart, then they were not going to allow them to be there anymore. So we tried to solve that problem, but we could not solve that problem because then the manager said, you guys are going to have to leave. I mean, we went through all these iterations of what can we do and how do we do it.
And I get that. I understand that succinctly. I understand that.
Okay.
But what I am saying that if an entrepreneur can find a way to get themselves that signature, then I think that we must grant them the opportunity to do that, as it is less restrictive than what is currently in place.
That's fine, and I don't think we were ever unwilling to do that. As we were having the workshops, the shops on this, and we were trying different options and different ways of handling it, the food truck operators were coming back and saying, not good enough, not good enough. And we basically got to the point where as long as you can specify something less restrictive, and if they can't get that, then that's the end of it. And I mean, I can write that. That's not a problem. It's just they wanted something more. They wanted us to somehow give them the ability to park their trucks there, and we could not force any of those entities to give them permission.
Okay, and that's fine.
Okay.
I understand. I understand that completely. My goal too is to be as permissive as possible while being as safe as possible, while spending as little more money and time on this as possible. So that's where I want to be with this situation. Thank you.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez, then Vice Mayor Bradford. Mr. Chisholm?
I just wanted to add to this. I think if the application process includes requirement for insurance, liability insurance, which names the owner and the city as well as the property owner as additionally insured, you take care of the liability issue. It doesn't keep somebody from suing you, but at least provides a degree of cover. The application itself is the mechanism that allows us to control that, and the inspection done by the fire department and other agencies. The health department has an inspection for those units, and the fire department has an inspection. If we're complying with all of those regulations, that should at least provide some degree of protections to all of us, and I think that's what you were talking about. But the real hang-up, I think, is who is the owner, and if the owner has a representative that's authorized to sign, then that's as good as the owner signing. You know, they're going to be.
And that's
but I think just if you build the protections in as you grant the permits, you solve a lot of issues.
And that's where, Commissioner Vasquez, I just want, and that's where I'm trying to get to, right, is if they have that signature, because with any other thing, they're the managers or whatever, designated agents upon hiring. I mean, it's just, you know, what it is. Upon hiring their designated agents tasked with the responsibilities of, you know, evaluating risk management or evaluating what goes on in the property and policing the property and on and on. So I think that if they give them that responsibility and it's understood that they are the agent of that property, then we have done our due diligence, and it's up to the mobile food truck owner to obtain that signature and provide it to the city. That's not further permitting. That is, you know, liability issues being covered. So thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez, please.
Mr. Mayor, can I just answer Commissioner Caldwell's question, please?
Sure.
In the state section, they do state that these folks have to get a DBPR professional regulation license. So they do get one. The city never under this was issuing any kind of license or permit. And the only issue that we really had any ownership over was the fire department's inspection and making sure that was, you know, I think it's done every 6 months or whatever. I'm sorry?
Mr. Caldwell, we'll come back to you. Let's just continue and then just go back on the board and I'll call you again.
Thank you, Mayor. So it was my understanding when we went through all this that all the city required was a notified letter from the property owner giving the food trucks permission to be there. It was the property owner's responsibility to find that these food trucks had all the required documentation, permits, and then the only responsibility the city had was to have a fire deputy go and inspect everything that was in order, as far as fire hazard and so forth. Am I correct?
That's right. That's correct.
Is that correct? So the city doesn't have any liability on what happens on that property if there's a food truck that goes on fire or whatever, right? That's not under the city's responsibility because the owner gave them permission to be there.
We all, just, I don't want to leave it, we always have liability. Anytime we're permitting and something's happening and we're inspecting, there's a certain amount of liability that the city has. So you can't always shed that, but you can protect yourself and the city as much as possible through the process, and that's what you want to do.
Okay, and the other responsibility of the city, as far as our code compliance goes, is that they have the adequate parking for the number of food trucks on site, right? So if a code compliance drives by and there is 5 or 6 food trucks in a site and there's less parkings available, then that's a code violation. Am I correct? Is that something that was
I think that's the way it's written. I believe that's the way it's written.
Okay. And I know the question came up about displaying permits. I think that it was agreed that permits have to be displayed so that when our our fire inspection goes by, they can see those permits on their window. Am I correct on that as well?
Yes.
Yes, and also their state permit would be up.
Right, all the permits should be on site. So the parking, the number of food trucks depends on the available parking space. Now tents, I understand the tents is a little tricky because you have open flame underneath a tent, which, as we said, it's not a movable truck. So I think that was not part of the, what we had gone over and approved, right?
Right.
Okay. I was just taking notes. I just wanted to make sure that all this is, okay, I got all my answers. Thank you so much.
Vice Mayor Bradford, then Commissioner Burbank, and then Commissioner Jody Lee.
I think this is the third or fourth time this ordinance has gone before me in 6 years. All I can say is wow. So, Mr. Chisholm,
Yes, ma'am.
what do you think of this ordinance?
I haven't had any food truck food yet, so it might not be real good, but the ordinance itself, I think, has a good base, and I think there's a few things I would recommend some changes to. I think the parking issue, if they're going to be customers to the food trucks, and if it's in a commercial area, then they either have enough parking or they don't, and that's really should be regulated by the property owner. It shouldn't be necessarily regulated by us. I know our code requires they got to be 10 feet apart and separated from other vehicles, so that's a part that's a fire safety issue, and I think that's something we want to keep. Then it says it's got to be on a hard surface. That is interesting because it could be possible to have areas that are not improved for parking that could be eligible for placing vehicles and have the separation requirements as long as it wasn't, it wasn't in an area that was prone to fires, that kind of thing. So I think there's some flexibility there. I know in the case of the city, we have them in parks, and largely they're unpaved areas. So I think if we can operate it safely in an unpaved area, there's probably areas that you could operate them unsafe, in the commercial properties. The thing that in all the years I've had to deal with this, we always talk about it, and usually we come back with the things that appear to be problems to us to resolve them. So it's not unusual to have them be reviewed periodically. And I don't know that we'll ever get it totally wiped clean, but the best you can do is try to put your best foot forward. And I think if you have a vendor that's licensed by the state, approved by the fire department, and then I don't know, is a BTR required? Is a BTR required for this? So if they got a BTR license from the city and have insurance, then I don't know what else you'd want.
Are they required to have a BTR?
Other than to have the property owner advised or have consent from an agent of the property owner.
Are they required to have a BTR by each city that they're in?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess this is where I go to when we talk about life, safety, health, and all that. I recently had somebody approach asking to be in the parking lot, and the first thing that came to my brain was, what's your insurance? I want to be licensed. I want to be put on as additional insured. That's not the city's responsibility. That's my responsibility as a property owner to say, I need to have you list me as an additional insured if I want to cover my bottom line. I don't want to regulate to regulate to regulate. And sometimes I think that's what we do. I don't necessarily agree, unfortunately, Jody, with food tents under here. I think that's under your special events permit. That has absolutely zero to do with a food truck. That's like, hey, I'm XYZ restaurant, I'm going to throw something out in the parking lot. Well, somebody gets sick, it's falling under that restaurant. That should be under that restaurant's license and that restaurant's special events. Parking, 100% agree. A business owner is required to have XYZ amount of parking spaces based on their business type. Obviously, a business is not going to say, I have 15 parking spaces and I know I use those parking spaces, but I'm going to give you 10 of them. So I think there's a lot on the discretion of the property owners, having that consent. And again, I don't want to regulate to overregulate. I want to regulate to make sure that we're covering the life, safety, and health of individuals. One of the things I did not like, I clearly remember, and I voiced it then, driving down Howland, and I think it was in front of the Winn-Dixie, I had some young girls out there with signs, swinging the signs, stepping in the road. The food truck was parked on the sidewalk. That, no way, not allowed. But in a safe, lit, parked area that is not in danger to other individuals in the community, and they have went through their steps and processes to become DBPR licensed, they are properly insured, I don't have a problem with it. Unless, of course, I go there to make me sick, but then I do. But very rarely does that happen. So I don't know, I mean, I like that you've pulled the verbiage and the descriptions from the state site. If anything, I think it just needs to be less complicated reading. Other than that, we haven't had any problems since we wrote this.
Well, because we haven't enforced it.
So what do we have to do to enforce it? And is it even enforceable the way it is?
They've had some enforcement, yeah.
Have we enforced it?
Yes.
Yes.
Not totally, but I know it has been on occasion.
Right. I mean, I don't see these guys out there anymore swinging the signs, and, I think for the most part, we may get some stragglers that pop up a truck that maybe don't know the ordinance, and hopefully you guys can educate them, and then, they move on. And I think that helped. I don't see the food trucks on the sidewalks and doing what they were doing before, so I do know it's worked. So with that said, what part of this needs changed again?
Commissioner, are you done? Commissioner Burbank?
Thank you. This thing on? There we go. This thing went south in like the fourth paragraph where it talked about potentially negative effects by posing a threat to brick and mortar restaurants. I don't know what kind of threat that would be. If it's a threat to their business, they need to study up on some economic Darwinism, because if they can't compete, they should go someplace else. I have some questions for our acting, interim, whatever he is, planning director, if I might. Hi, Joe. Yeah, Joe. Okay, hi.
Hey, good evening, City Commissioner.
How many permits have been filed through your office for these things, special event permits?
So as far as permitting special events, I'm not sure because that's handled by Parks. As far as the permitting that was produced from this ordinance, I was not too involved in the drafting, but I know Marsha and Ron at the time were. There was never an application that was produced after this ordinance was adopted. So essentially, we've had a few people come in and talk to staff, but there's never been a full submittal of any of these documents that is required through the ordinance.
That's good. Okay, then when it talks about mobile food dispensing vehicles may not be located at eligible facilities where parking is not adequate to serve the business facility as per the Land Development Code, do they mean parking would not be adequate after the truck was parked there, or the parking was not adequate before they got there?
So it's essentially,
and
it can be both.
No matter who does the parking calculation, staff or the applicant?
It would be staff. It would be both scenarios. It could be both scenarios. For example, if the way the ordinance is written, it allows the truck to set up, and then it allows them the possibility to set up tents for tables and things of that nature. If it's, let's say, a parking lot requires 20 spaces, and they have 22 spaces. Let's say the truck takes up the 2, and people just come and go and leave, then they would be in compliance with the parking ordinance.
So your staff does, you was the example you gave is very simple, 20 parking spaces.
Right.
You get up to 60 or 70 like a Lowe's parking lot where you got a couple of hundred. Who is actually going to sit down and say, okay, well, they need this many. You're going to put a food truck and a tent out there, or 2 food trucks and 2 tents and a couple tables. Who's actually going to sit down and do the math? Okay.
If I've got the time, which I don't.
I just want to put that out there. And then they talk about seating and tables must be located on a paved surface. I can't imagine anything closer to hell than sitting in a parking lot on a bench in August, say. What's the temperature of that pavement, like 140? Yeah, no, that's not going to fly either. And the trash receptacles, blah, blah, blah. So we got, who does the calculations? Is the city exempt from this ordinance?
I would imagine so. We hold our, essentially.
It's not listed in here on the exemptions, because it talks about, because I'm thinking Friday Night Bites.
It's a city-sponsored event, so.
But it's not specified in this order, because I thought all along since this thing first came up that this heavily favors the city. It's almost a form of a monopoly. Basically, you're saying, well, we're exempt, we can do whatever we want, but you, poor Joe, you're not so good. You're going to have to give us parking calculations. You're going to have to prepare a detailed site plan showing us where all the buildings are, where the parking spaces are, all this other stuff. It's, as has been said before, this thing is not only unenforceable, it's impractical. It's like the city had a perfectly good set of rules in place, and we said, well, let's add a whole big dash of stupid and see what we can come up with. We need to either kick this away if we're not going to enforce it, or fix it, or just ignore it completely. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
Okay. I got a couple of questions, and then we'll go to Commissioner Jody Lee, then Commissioner McCool, then Commissioner Villa-Vasquez. Chief Snyder, really quick. When we inspect these food trucks, you guys obviously do a thorough job, correct?
Yes, sir. We use the Florida Fire Prevention Code, and we just follow that throughout the inspection process.
So when you pass a food truck, you guys are, for the most part, unless some type of user issue, that these are good to be out in the streets for the most part, for the cooking and stuff?
Yes, yes. I mean, and we've been working on a countywide inspection process so that every time a food truck goes to a different city, they don't have to get another inspection. So what we've done is we've worked with all the cities and we've come up with a sticker. And when we do that inspection, we put that sticker on the truck, which is good for 6 months. And so that when you walk up on it, you know that the basic parts of that inspection have been done. There's still a couple little things that we do, but it cuts the inspection time down to almost,
So we can have peace of mind that they're good to go. That's essentially, okay, perfect. So my question is to the city attorney, is this ordinance literally not a redundancy? It's a serious question, because if we have a state statute already, why are we, to Vice Mayor's point, over-regulating again by doing an ordinance that is literally getting state statute and putting it in an ordinance when we already have this? We're not, and I get Mr. Reese said we were somehow enforcing some of this, but we really aren't enforcing it. And I'll let you answer the question in just a minute, Marcia. This should literally be something that we shouldn't have an ordinance on. We should be able to have people follow state statute. We should be able to say we trust our fire department. I trust them. If they inspect it, I have no issue with it. They're going through the hassle of getting things through the BTR, right? Getting their business tax receipt. They're going through the state to get a permit. And now we're going to somehow get signatures. We're wasting staff time. Is this a redundancy?
I would say in many ways, yes, but then there are some provisions in here. Some of the things that you all have discussed were added. We had 2 workshops, so we had food truck folks at the workshop, so some of the things with the tables and things, a lot of that came out through the folks, that came to speak. The section on signs is very important, and so I think because we were having everything in the sidewalk and right on the right-of-way, and it created a danger for people driving and not being able to see. So I think the sign provision is very important. There may be a couple others. I would have to go through it section by section to look at them. And of course, our code is not as comprehensive and complete as we would like it to be. So I would suggest, if that's where you're all going, that we look at some key provisions that pertain to food trucks, but in different ways, like the signs or the issue with, them affecting right-of-ways. And also, I think the spaces are also important, because we need to know if we have an individual that says, well, like Joe's example, I want to put 2 food trucks over here knowing they don't have parking, and they're going to create exit and entrance problems with all sorts of things from the attitude like, this is my property and I'm going to do this. I think that's something else that, may well be important to go in the code. It doesn't have to be a separate ordinance. We don't have to, have an application and all of that kind of thing, but I do think there are some key provisions that are not redundant.
So for example, if we have issues with signs, then we should have a sign ordinance, right? Which
we do, but we don't have this particular, because again,
we can add it. For example, on my way to City Hall today, I drove by Howland, right, where there's this retention pond, and in a residential area, you have somebody's business advertised behind somebody's private property. So now, are we going to start allowing that in every single house now in the city?
No.
If we have a sign issue with people flipping things and signs and stuff like that, we don't put this pressure on our staff and our city employees when we have state statute that already dictates it. You literally just said we can't add to it, we can literally imitate it.
Yes.
So let's get rid of an ordinance that is only bringing us up here to another workshop for us to do nothing. I mean, literally, Mr. Chisholm, he's been 40 years or something like that, Mr. Chisholm. If he comes up to you and says, you know what, let's do something, an amendment on signs, let's do something on the signs. But to literally do this redundancy, I think it's a waste of our staff time. I trust our fire department. I believe if they inspect somebody, they're good to go. The pressure should be put on the property owner. If Lowe's or Walmart don't want to allow somebody on their property, they shouldn't be allowed on that property. There's a lot of other places that would allow that. So that's my 2 cents, Commissioner Jody Lee and then Commissioner McCool.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I'll say it on the record for one time, I 2,000,000% agree with you. It's redundant. I've made the comments. There's some things like Mr. Chisholm just pointed out about the parking and things like that. But you're right. But everybody's missing one thing. There's also random fire department checks. Whenever they want to, they can check them. But these are also listed with the health department, and the state goes and does quarterly checks for the health department also. And just like everything else in the world, if someone comes on your property and you own property, something happens, you're liable. So the insurance thing, it is what it is. If they got permission, if we get into giving permits and we get into allowing them to have a permit to do this food truck event and this property, that could put us in that where we could become liable because we said, yes, put a bunch of food trucks there. With us not making all this extra, it keeps us out of it. Yes, we can have some ones for safety. They drive by in the sheriff's department or code enforcement, fire department, you see people out there on the sidewalk. We get it. The sidewalks, unsafe practices, we totally understand it. But you're right, this is real redundant. The state has guidelines. We can just enforce the state guidelines. I can understand if you have a parking lot that's got 20 spaces and you got 10 food trucks in there, I get it. But you're right, this is people trying to make an honest living. Here's an easy one. You don't want food trucks? Get us some restaurants. Wouldn't that be a novel idea? Just saying. But I mean, it's just, we don't need to keep regulating and over-regulating. The more you stick government in my back pocket, the more I'm going to get annoyed. Stay out of my pocket. All right.
Mr. Chisholm?
You know, I'm in total agreement. You can't totally regulate everything associated with it to prevent something from happening, because it's sooner or later something's probably going to happen somewhere. But the one thing I would suggest that we find a way, and it might be through the fire department regulations, because you got to have access, access to and exit from. That is a key thing for any place where we're going to be bringing people into an area, such as a church parking lot. Make sure the road exiting that site is it's a safe area for them to go out, and the visual clearance is necessary, and the same thing about the entrance. But when you get beyond that, I mean, as far as operating on the site, there's not a lot of things any of us can do about that, and we probably do over-regulate it from what I see here. So, if we want to do something different, we can bring something different to you that has less regulation or no regulation. We can repeal the whole thing.
Commissioner McCool and then Commissioner Villa-Vasquez.
Number one, I'm completely gobsmacked that we've spent more time, attorney money, talking about the food truck regulation where no one's complained about it other than political reasons, right? That we've spent all of this time on this, more time on that than we did on charter stuff. We excoriated someone for talking about this stuff over regulation, but that's what we think that we're doing here. The state tasks us with protecting our residents and allows business owners this, what's not talked about is the law, the Occupational Freedom and Opportunity Act. It was enacted for referees and timekeepers because they were made to get thousands of dollars worth of permitting, and they were being overregulated. And there is a loophole in here regarding food trucks. It's our job to protect our residents with at least minimum standards and regulation. And here's the thing, if you don't put something down, it's so subjective. The state, the fire department does have state fire regulations to enforce, right? So are they going to be the agency that completely controls the the food trucks? Are they going to be, is code enforcement going to have anything to do with it? Who do you call when there's an issue? What is the mechanism by which tents are approved? Does anybody tell me tents that pop up? What's up with the tents?
The tents, you need a special event permit for the tents. The tents are not regulated under this ordinance.
I know, that's the point I'm making. They're not. So what do we do with tents? Do we write into the ordinance? I'm just saying, no one complained about this. This is like no one was pissed about their rights, is what I'm saying. This is a non-issue. And I can't believe that we're even talking about this when we have stuff like a moratorium that affects everybody in our community, that we're preempting that for this, that we're preempting our legal pass-through fees with development for this. That we're sitting here talking about this when it wasn't even a problem, and we have bypassed important stuff for this. This is what I'm spending time on tonight. You know, it's ridiculous. Man, I'm an entrepreneur. I want people to make money, but I want my residents protected also. And I think that we have done that. You know, I think that we have done that. There's no permitting. We're not asking them to do anything. The minimum standards here, nobody's trying to keep someone from not doing business. You know, I'm BS over this, that we have more important stuff to talk about where we actually have problems. Now our moratorium is going to be over what? In less than a week. What have we talked about? What have we talked about? Crap. Nothing. Nothing about the moratorium in our workshop. What have we talked about? Legal pass-through. We got a $500 million project right there at Howland coming through. Wonder how much legal nothing's gonna get passed through because we're talking about this. And it's just ridiculous. So to do whatever. I think that, how many hours? What's gonna be worked on? What's gonna be kept? How much to rewrite this? How much time is it gonna take to rewrite this? To protect us, to investigate how much it's gonna cost us to do this. It's so stupid.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to say that this started because of residents' complaints. We didn't have a problem with these food trucks. Residents called us, sent us emails, came here, complained about all the food trucks parked in their neighborhood, parked where they're not supposed to be, parked on their property without permission. This is how this all started. This is not started with our commissioners. The state rules were put there, but they also stated that the cities can also add rules that accommodate each city aside from the states. And these things were put together to protect the clients who use those same places where these food trucks, and they're walking in there, but they're not walking in there for the food trucks. They're walking in to go to the church, to go to the stores or whatever. They also protect the owners of these properties, excuse me, because we also got owners complaining that there were food trucks parked on their plaza without permission, Deltona Plaza being one of them. And then we also protect the truck vendors themselves, because I have my paperwork, but he doesn't. And he's still sharing the space that I am in the plaza. So this is what was my understanding when all this came about. Did we spend a lot of time in this? Yes, we did, because we wanted to make sure that we were meeting the complaints from the residents, but we were also giving the food truck owners the opportunity to make a living out of their business. So I don't think it was a waste of time. I think we did we came up with good things. Does it need a little bit fixing? Well, if you think so, then absolutely. But I don't think it was a waste of time, because I think there is better control now of the food trucks. They have a space where they go to. They're controlling those spaces. People know where they are. They're not on private businesses. And about the parking, yes, it is important. Because if they're parked in a food or whatever store like Unidos or whatever, where are the clients going to park if you have a food truck there? There used to be a food truck park right in the grass by Unidos, and they had to be removed. Why? Because of these rules that we put together. Maybe some of them might be fixed, some of them can be deleted, but I still think we need these rules. I think the food trucks are perfect the way they are now. They're doing good. Everyone is happy. Everybody knows where their favorite food truck is. You know, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? I mean, I think everybody's happy. I don't know. I don't know where the complaints are coming from right now.
Commissioner Jody Lee, then Commissioner Burbank. Vice Mayor.
Entertaining. For one, people did complain. They do complain. They didn't complain to the city because the city had a long history of retaliation. And everybody knows that. City employees knew it. Outside people knew it. People that lived in the city. There's a long history of retaliation. And if you don't think there's a history of retaliation, just look at some of the lawsuits we paid out to people that come to these meetings. The city has a history of retaliation, so people are not going to complain. I know people that own several trucks. Brothers in Armed Barbecue, friend of mine, Joel, retired Marine. I hear it all the time. Someone else owns Fat Boys Potatoes. People have been complaining. They don't come to the city because there was a history of retaliation. Now, that's been squashed from what I can see. But there has been. If you called code enforcement and complained about stuff, if you had an issue with code enforcement would come after you. There's been a history of retaliation in the city. Everybody knows. So yes, people did complain. Maybe they did complain, but they only complained to some people because they're afraid of the backlash. And the other thing is, I keep hearing this whole thing about this moratorium, we're not spending no time in it. If anybody knows, once you did the moratorium and it cancels, you can't automatically put another one in place. It's against the law. So it's easier we could just say no, but that's a different subject. But we are doing totally redundancy on we have state law that says what the food truck ordinance says. Why do we just have to keep on doing more stuff? And you can't say they're enforcing all this. Just at the plaza down the street from my house this last weekend, there was 5 food trucks in a parking lot, and nobody checked them. No code enforcement, no sheriff's department, no nothing. And nobody said a damn thing. And they were there all Saturday night. But we're talking about all this enforcement. There was none. They didn't have permission from the property owner, the management, nobody. So if the state says they have to be inspected so often from the fire department, they have to be inspected so often from the health department, they have to have a business license, can't we just be done? I understand safety, they can't be in the street. That's code enforcement. That's the sheriff's department, the fire department. It's not up to us as sitting here at the bench saying, oh, I can tell you can't park next to that tree. Let's make a rule. You can't park to this tree. You can't park on, I mean, how many churches have gravel parking lots? But according to this ordinance, you can't park in a gravel parking lot. Okay, go ahead and start telling all these people, all these churches that have broken parking lots that you can't put a truck in there no more. See how that's going to work out. You look right across from Tivoli, you know the church I'm talking about. There's 2 food trucks there in a tent all the time. That's a gravel parking lot or a paved space? That's all busted up. It's a half a hill going up. We don't have to stick our hands in everything everybody's doing. I mean, it's just, I understand you're in a grass field. You don't want a food truck that cooks. I get that. Common sense. But it's just, the government needs, the city, the government, however, stay out of everybody's lives all the damn time.
Commissioner Burbank.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to my planning director, please. Mr. Reeves, we don't know if the city is exempt or not from these ordinances because it doesn't specify this in here. So I'm picturing worst case. There's a big handsome fellow back there in the back wall, and he likes to say hum. He goes to a Friday night bites at West Corral Park, and he sees all these food trucks. He goes home, he goes, I wonder if they got a permit to do that, and he finds out they didn't. I see that there's a potential he could actually come forward with a code compliance complaint, and we can issue a citation against the city for not following its own code. Does that sound like it's a potential to happen if somebody really wanted to push the issue?
There's a provision in the ordinance that if you have a special event permit.
Do we?
Yes.
We do have a
I
special.
believe that on those, there's a number of them that have food trucks that were being done through, they used to be being done through special event permits.
Well, does this special event permit include the site plan showing all the parking buildings where the food trucks will be parked, and does it have the parking calculations included? So we know there's all that is in there, right?
I haven't personally inspected it, but all I'm saying is that there were 2 locations, I think, that where their city was doing food trucks under special event permits, and that's as much as I know.
Okay, that's something I gather was worth looking into. But I'm in agreement with a lot of the people on this thing is everything that's in here is already being done by somebody else, either the USDA, the fire department, the code enforcement, the sign permit. We already have a sign code. We may amend that to include provision, don't let people waive. Actually, it says, what is it, those twirlers, they can't be in the sight triangle and an intersection. Rather than an entire new ordinance, which is over-regulates something that's not really a problem, just add one sentence to our sign code, we should be done. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Bradford.
Whew. Y'all ain't gonna like this comment. Okay, so instead of us sitting up here tit for tat going back and forth and we need this and we need that, how about we go through this and we point out what would you like to have amended or not amended? Because all I'm hearing is I want, we can, but let's kind of, you know, we've done it before where we look at something and we say, okay, this section, Madam Attorney, what can we do with this? You know, that's what we need to be doing instead of sitting up here going, this is all trash and let's get rid of it. Because it's not all trash. A lot of this is very valuable information. Like I'm going through it going, we need to know that property has a site plan. There is adequate parking. There's entrances for fire and police to come in and out. We have licensed vendors that are there that are approved by the DBPR and that are not some fly-by-night Joe Blow who put his little thing together and is sitting on somebody's property, okay? So instead of us sitting up here going, let's figure out what part of this do we really not like and go through it. Yes, Madam Attorney.
Madam Vice Mayor, if you all would like, because I'm just trying to look for some methodology I can come up with on how to achieve what you're talking about. If Joe and I could go through this ordinance and look at the things we think should be placed somewhere else, not necessarily kept in a separate ordinance, and then we can take it to Mr. Chisholm, and then this can appear, he can send it to all of you so you can look at the specifics and where it would go. And if you like it, then we'll bring it back in an ordinance that just amends the different code sections where we need to put it in. And I think that would probably be more productive than everybody just saying, well, I don't like this, or I don't like this, or and that way we can give you something substantive to look at, the things that we collectively believe are important and should be safe somewhere. And that, I think that gives all of you a lot more substance to react to and deal with, so that we're dealing with, no, we're not going to keep the food truck ordinance as it is, but we're going to make sure that the pieces we think are important are going to show up in other parts of the code. Does that work for you?
I think that's great. You know, it's like reading this, I know a lot of this came from fire too, not having them too close to buildings, and, so a lot of this was taken in consideration. So I don't have any problems with that.
I don't either. Mr. Chisholm, you wanted to say something?
Just a kind of an ending comment. Having real close knowledge of operations of these food trucks, I can tell you they're not getting rich. It's probably the first thing. The second thing I can tell you, they're working their fannies off to do what they're doing, and they are providing something that's not found anywhere else. So when you think about, yeah, we're spending an hour or two talking about it, yes, we are. But you have people out there that they're spending more than an hour every day just getting ready to go work. They're not just taking a shower and getting in a car and going somewhere. They're taking a shower, getting ready to pack their vehicle so it's ready to go, make sure it's got fuel, make sure it's got product and all those things. There's a lot to it. when somebody's actually doing it. So I'm on the side of less regulation is better, and the more you regulate, the less you'll see of these entrepreneurs, how small it might be, that's out there making a living, and in probably the toughest climate you can possibly have, and get something done.
Vice Mayor, you had any other questions?
That's great. So you guys are going to edit it, work with code. And my other concern, one of the other questions I had written down is, say there is a problem, are you able, without an ordinance, to move them, ask them to move, to regulate it? I mean, us removing it, how is that tying your hands as well? Because you need an ordinance to enforce.
Well, hang on
Code
just a minute.
section, I mean, it's not an
There
ordinance.
is regulation without this ordinance.
Well, what I'm talking about is there's swinging signs on the street. You know, I get parking on the sidewalk, you guys can easily go, hey, get off that parking lot. I'm assuming they were on the sidewalk. I'm assuming they were there because they were kicked out of the parking lot, you know. But I have seen them as well, just parked alongside the road, you know, and believe it or not, since we've had the ordinance, they're gone. And I guess that's a lot of the bad ones we scared away, because the good ones, you see them following guidelines. So what's this going to do to you?
If I may, so if we were to repeal the ordinance completely, there are protections that are built in, and so I see both sides of it. I see that there is state regulation that preempts us, and then I also see the protections that are within it. So we do have our standard, for example, fire codes and things like that, that will regulate access and things of that nature. Things that we would lose, for example, would be if there is a vacant lot that doesn't have proper sidewalks, things like that. What the state statute says is that we cannot prohibit them from the city as a whole. So if we were to repeal this ordinance, for example, on a vacant lot that has no sidewalks, they can set up on that vacant lot and they can, you know, do business. And then if someone were to get hurt in the right of way and transferring back and forth, so there are certain protections that we would lose if we were to repeal the ordinance as a whole.
And that's something that I would definitely love to see in there. So that was my concern, was, you know, you making sure you're working with code to make sure that they're able to enforce the, as we call them, life safety areas that, you know, we're all concerned about. Sure. That was it. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Joe.
so Commissioner McCool?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, sir, Mayor. I appreciate that. Thank you. That was my concern, as the Vice Mayor has stated. If there's no mechanic by which to enforce, then how do you enforce the bad ones? Because you don't have a guideline. What is the mechanism that triggers that enforcement? Because the state does say this. If we were to, who enforces that? Who do they pay the fine to? What is the fine? How do we regulate if they violate the code? Can you tell me that mechanism and what triggers it? If there's a fire violation, what happens? Are they just told to move along? Is there a fine for that?
Built into our ordinance today, there is a fine.
Yep.
It gets tricky, for example, if it's a commercial lot and you've got a food truck, because there is a specific preemption on the food truck. We have to address food trucks specifically in our code in order to try to enforce those types of uses.
Exactly, and that is my point, because if there's no incentive, if there's a bad apple there, which there are really great apples, because I go talk to food trucks every week. I talk to them specifically about this, and no one has a problem with it, okay? Here's what this says. The state statute says a municipality, a county, or a local government entity may not prohibit mobile food dispensing vehicles from operating within the entirety of the entity's jurisdiction. So there's no, if they get kicked out of one place, they can go set up someplace else. If we have something in an ordinance, we're able to regulate the bad apples. And it's like they're saying, then you lose that enforcement and you lose that mechanism by which you're able to enforce things like that. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah, you don't overregulate or whatever, but also you lose the ability to protect yourself or to keep the bad apples out. And I don't see a single food truck sitting here tonight. Yeah, they might talk because they're scared of the government, but the people that they were scared of are no longer here in a position to do that. So I don't see any scary people up here. And they didn't have a problem coming out before when the scary people were here, okay? I don't see a single food truck sitting here regarding this. I think that what we have can be tightened up, but to do away with it, it does not allow us to enforce what needs to be enforced.
Steve, Commissioner Caldwell, are you trying to get on the? Okay. Joe, can I ask you a question? Do we have any type of ordinances right now on vacant lands?
Other than, for example, it not having a principal use and things like that, but essentially it doesn't call out specifically, for example, mobile food dispensing vehicles.
If, Madam Attorney, if this ordinance never existed, would the owners still be allowed, the owners of Walmart, would they still be allowed to call our code enforcement or our police department or Volusia County Sheriffs and ask them to remove somebody they don't want on their property?
Yeah.
Isn't that part of property rights?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they can do that.
Does the state statute not, and I got to reiterate this, not say that we cannot add to what they already did?
Well, not exactly, but I mean, basically, there's certain things that we can't, that we're preempted from dealing with. So this ordinance had to be tailored in to only regulate the things that we would be allowed by state statute. So what I'm talking about doing is picking out some of the key life safety kinds of issues and putting them back in our code, maybe just not in this ordinance, so we can also then tie in our enforcement section for the, Commissioner was talking about the ones that just won't, follow the rules or whatever, and we can actually, tie that into enforcement sections. It's just going to be a matter of trying to pick out the ones we think are the essential pieces to the life safety protection and see if we can come up with that and then make sure that we can enforce it.
Perfect. And that's what I'm trying to get to is
yes,
we don't need to necessarily have a food truck ordinance. We can put some of those life-saving situations in our code.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm just trying to avoid the redundancy and putting more workload on our staff, which are, they're understaffed right now. That's all I'm going to say. Commissioner Jody Lee, then Commissioner Burbank, and after that, I believe you guys already have direction, if I understood our commission correctly.
Thank you, Mayor. Like I've said it before, and I agree with you, it's the redundancy. But I can tell you, you're also missing one point of this whole thing. It's a city ordinance. It's not a law. I've had several $500 tickets from code enforcement about food trucks at the plaza. I've taken them all to court, and I've beaten them all. I've been threatened with being arrested by code enforcement for having the food truck event. They tried to shut me down, called the sheriff's department. I said no. They left. They couldn't arrest me. It's a city ordinance. It's not breaking the law. It's a city ordinance. There's a big difference between a law and an ordinance. I've gotten tickets from it, brought it to court, and got it thrown out. When there's a safety and health violation, that's a different story. That's what everybody keeps bringing up, and I get is being safe. I'm not going to be condescending and starting to babble back and forth, but everybody wants to do things that are safe for our residents. But to keep sticking, we need to regulate this, regulate this, regulate this. We're doing it enough. The state says what it is. The fire department says what it is. The health department says what it is. I understand you don't want to park in a vacant lot. That's acceptable. But like Mayor, you said, if someone goes to a property, you set up a food truck, you don't want them there, it's your property, You call a tow truck, have them removed. I mean, you don't have to call the code enforcement. It's not up to the code enforcement to have them removed off private property. It's the owner's property. Call a tow truck and have them taken out. It's simple. You don't want them there, tell them to leave. They don't leave, you have them towed. It's your property. You can do what you want. The owners have the right to do what they want with their property. We don't need to just keep on sticking our fingers in the pot every time we turn around. That's what this whole thing is.
Commissioner Burbank and then Mr. Chisholm. Again, you have direction, so.
Thank you, Mayor. Our planning director mentioned they could go to a vacant lot someplace. I think somewhere in our land development code says all vehicles must be parked on a hard surface. That means it's not a vacant lot. So it is covered somewhere else in our land development code, as well as fire codes, as well as food and health safety codes, stuff like that. So that is covered. I think a few tweaks to existing rules, sign code possibly. We don't need to just beat this dead horse any longer. Thank you so much.
I'm going to call Commissioner McCool one last time, and then we're going to go ahead and close the meeting.
I want to understand the enforcement part of the issue. If I can understand that, what are the consequences? If you have somebody, you move them from place to place, right, and without following enforcement, what now, if we did away with the ordinance, what holds them accountable? Right? What consequences there? Tell me what the consequences are. I am a bad food truck operator, which there's only maybe 4 to 5% of bad operators, okay? But if we wouldn't need prisons either if everybody behaved, but they don't, okay? And that's the fact. And the fact of this is protecting life and safety. The state regulates the quality of the food. We can't do anything if there's somebody that gets inspected and in 4 months they have bad food or sell bad chicken or do something like that. I'm talking about the 4%. Understand that. I'm not talking about the other 96% that are out there. Again, I'm an entrepreneur and I encourage that and want to support it. I support food trucks, okay? But I need to understand the enforcement mechanism in doing away with this. If somebody does not follow fire and safety regulations, they get kicked off the property, right, or they get shut down. Does that happen? If there's a violation of that, what happens? Can the fire department answer that? If there's repetition and violation, what happens to the food truck?
They close them down.
I want to understand it from the fire side and the code side. There's two different entities here if we're talking about duplication.
Just to introduce myself real fast, I'm Sam Schaller.
Microphone.
Sorry about that. Just to introduce myself, I'm Sam Schaller, Captain Assistant Fire Marshal. If we have a major life safety issue, let's say it's a food truck operating without a fire protection system, exhaust hood, they're ordered by us under the state fire code to cease and desist cooking.
And what happens if they don't, if they move to another location and they do not cease and desist?
If they move to another location and they do not cease and desist, under state statute 633 is where we have the authority to contact law enforcement and then issue an arrest.
Okay. Is there any punitive, is there any financial punitive fines for that?
The actual fines, we have the enforcement authority, which grants us to cease and desist, request the sheriff's office or local police department do an arrest. The fining comes out of the local ordinances.
Thank you. Now, I want to ask that same thing from building services. What is the punitive nature and the mechanism by which a bad apple is fined, or what is the fallout from that?
So from a code perspective, we would have to cite the landowner.
Okay.
From that. So it's not essentially,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
So not the food truck, but the actual landowner.
Right, so then what becomes of the financial obligation on the part of the landowner?
Go to code enforcement.
Correct, yeah, they have to go to the magistrate and they have to go through the process if it were to persist that the food truck were to continue.
What happens to the food truck? What happens to the actual operator?
The operator, it wouldn't be directly with them, it'd be directly with that landowner.
So
it'd be essentially a situation between the landowner getting with that food truck for compliance.
The actual food truck operator then is not fined by any stipulation in our ordinance, right? They're not held accountable, it's the landowner.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm trying to talk about accountability here. When we talk about liability issues, when we talk about accountability, if there's no mechanism by which to enforce a rule, then they are not held accountable for any violation thereof. They walk away. You just heard it. The state, this is what the fire marshal, or, chief says, and this is what the state says. Those are my only problem. They're not being held accountable. Oh, I'm sorry? No, he said they were arrested. I'm talking about fines. They can't enforce, fines.
That wasn't in the ordinance.
So,
I mean, that in the existing ordinance right now, what the deputy fire marshal said is not in there. Because when I worked on this with Ron, I don't think we were ever told that particular piece of information. No, it might be state law, but it's, but he's saying the fine would have to come through the locals, and we never had that provision. It wasn't in here.
So here's all I'm asking about is accountability. That's where I'm trying to go here I'm trying to make the argument for not doing away with the ordinance, but however, loosening up the reins as far as parking and stuff like that. I don't think it's over-regulation. I think that it's being responsible to the constituency.
The problem is, Commissioner McCool, the ordinance doesn't have fines. And they are suffering a fine because they have to pay to get out of prison. I mean, we're not going to go through this. They have direction.
Yeah, it's a dead horse at this juncture for me. You know what I'm saying? It can be less restrictive, but not done away with. I would never vote to have it done away with.
City Manager, any comments or concerns?
No, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what you're looking for. It'll differ with each of you, I know that, but we can try to bring something back. That's a pleasure.
All right. Is there any public comments before I adjourn the meeting?
No, Mayor.
All right, meeting's adjourned.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead. Your mic is off.
Volusia League of Cities award program's coming up. So if you've got any nominations you want to make, please fill it out.